So over the weekend, I was removing grout from tile, and I've looked for lots of ways to try and do it, and the internet really doesn't have a good option. There's two options. You can chisel it, or you can dump a chemical. It's an acid that breaks down the grout, which normally should work, but something was up with my grout, and I dumped the acid on it, and it only worked in certain areas and not in other areas. So I took a masonry grinding wheel. It's like a circular saw blade, goes on a grinder. There's no like teeth. It's actually little bits of diamond embedded inside of maybe some sort of aluminum alloy. And you grind it. It's a horrible mess. You can either do it dry, which gets dust everywhere. It gets dust in the next room because you have to get up to the doors, and it kicks it underneath the door and just coats the room. It coats the ceilings. It coats the walls. It's completely unavoidable. You have to completely seal off everything, and it's just impossible. Or you can do it mostly wet, which ends up also being its own issue because you're spraying water. Like I had to do it. I was grinding with one hand and spraying water with the other hand. And you always end up using a little more water than you wanted to, and it runs off somewhere. So it's just kind of a pain either way. But if you have grout that's an issue, the quickest way, without having a crew of 7 people with little chisels, is to grind it. To coat everything, cover everything off, put on the mask, glasses. If you have one of those Tyvek suits for doing like insulation, that's awesome. That's what I used. I used the blue ones. They're kind of like a cloth plastic mix. They're kind of breathable. I don't like the white sheer plastic ones because you get all sweaty inside and it's horrible. So I like a little breathing. And so you use your grinding wheel for most of it, but you get right up to the corners there, and usually you want to rip off the trim. And you get right up to the corners, and there's this little 2-inch section that you just can't get. You can try chiseling it, but what happens is you crack the tiles. You're chiseling in the line, and then the tile cracks off to the side, and obviously it looks like garbage. And it's just really mentally frustrating to have that situation where you've got all these cracked tiles now after all the continuous headache of sawing and taping up the rooms. So what I did is I found these tile cutting bits for, what is that tool called? A rotozip. That's what it is. Yeah, rotozip. But I was using a DREMEL so that I can get into corners. It's more like a finger at that point where you can kind of get deep into the corners. And I tried the name brand DREMEL bit second. So I've got 2 videos. I tried the rotozip zip bits from Walmart. Not Walmart. I'm an idiot. I'll never go to Walmart. Home Depot. And I tried them both. I tried the name brand and this one definitely was way better. Now you gotta make sure, either bring your tool with you or know your measurement. So there's a measurement on here. Let's see, right in the middle. So this one, 1/8 inch carbide, masonry tile, and maybe that's concrete or something. Oh, it's actually granite. I have some granite to cut too. Might try it on there, see how well it does on granite. But I was using it on floor grout, not the floor tiles. These would not cut the floor tiles. Maybe a brand new one would. So the issue I kept running into is they heat up, they get hot, and then when they're hot, they stop working. and you think that the tool is toast, but in reality it's just hot, and then those sharp teeth have expanded and become not sharp anymore. So what I was doing, this one I ran completely dry the whole time until it died. I did about half the room, which is way more longevity than I thought I was going to have. But then this one did fail. Once you start seeing like a red, once you see red on the tip, it starts turning that bright orange, then the tip is toast for sure. But basically, until you see that red, this thing will probably work. You probably just heated it up, and it's too hot, and it's too malleable, and it's not like a real, carbide dense point. It's heated up and expanded and become not sharp. Then I came to the Dremel one, and it worked, it worked right away, but it started to, once they really heat up the first time, they will lose some efficiency, but you can cool them off. What I was doing is, with this one, I had to do it because it was basically, it went from 100% to about 75% effectiveness pretty much instantly. And stayed at about 75%, probably because I kept dipping the bit into water while it was spinning. I would drill a little bit, I would cut out a little bit, and then I would sit in the water and I'd cut out a little bit more, and it actually worked really well. It kept my tool cool and everything. But this one I really didn't use any water, but it went through about half the room and through the hard part. It's like this part was some super formula, and the other parts were the regular formula. But this Dremel bit wasn't quite as satisfying. I mean, it was a little bit more expensive, and you can also run your hands along it, and you can feel that one way it's definitely got bite, and you can always go down to the base, because usually the base doesn't get worn out. What these are meant to do is drill straight into a tile on the wall, thin tiles, and then cut a little shape like for a switch outlet, or some sort of hole you got to cut into a tile. And I was using it for grout, so I needed the tip the most because it needed to continuously keep cutting these little chisel lines. But the Dremel one was more expensive, but it didn't hold up quite as well. It would do the job, but you're gonna want to buy you want to have at least 2 of these on hand, because you're gonna mess up with the first one. You're gonna mess it up, and you're gonna realize, oh man, better not do that again. And then you get the other one, and you realize, like, oh, these things have a short life, and I have to continuously put them in water and cool them off while I'm using them. Otherwise, they heat up, they stop working, and then you have to let them cool down. And your tool, because your tool will be hot as well, keeping it hot. So basically, this will be sort of the heat sink. If you turn it off and set it down, this is where all the heat from the motor of your tool is going to come out, basically, because it's all going to be contained within your tool. It's not going to have much of an escape, and it's going to be pretty hot in there, especially with the high RPMs that these need to cut. You pretty much want to turn these all the way up, full RPM. Don't jam it. Just let it chew its way in, and then grind a little bit. I found a couple of methods were working pretty nicely. I was able to kind of go under my grout and then kind of tip it up, and it would chew up, and then it would move its way along. But yeah, these rotozip bits were really nice. So you can't always be fooled by the Dremel bits. I've actually pretty much always been dissatisfied by Dremel brand bits. They seem to always be more of a, arts and crafts kind of tool rather than actual heavy duty, getting down to it kind of tool. Whereas like these rotozip bits, they know what you're going to do with them. You're going to jam it in there and you're going to cut. Whereas Dremel wants you to do it, super precise, and to go easy on them. But so yeah, that's my information on, and I got some videos on cutting the grout because there's so little information out there. Most people they just say you go down there with a chisel, and if you've got a 100 square foot area, sitting around with a chisel for 3 days straight just isn't viable for most people. So I went with the grinder, cut a line straight through, chisel out the extra, just because once you break it up, you're able to just pop off the extra pieces from the tiles and things like that. But that initial getting through it was definitely necessary with the grinder. And then carbide or diamond tip tooth drill bit for cutting tiles. Pretty much the only way to get the corners without actually taking the wall off at that little section and being able to stick your grinder down in there farther, or risking the chisel, which it's just too risky sometimes. In my view, it's just way too risky. So I hope you enjoy the videos. And that is how you figure out how to do grout removal when the information available is not satisfactory for you.